Hello and welcome to LA Currents. I'm Anita Bennett. A freedom festival, conversations on Black history, and health and wellness events. That's all been part of the African American Heritage Month celebrations here in the city of Los Angeles. Now joining us to talk about these celebrations, we have three council members with us. Councilmember Curren Price, Councilmember Marqueece Harris-Dawson, and Councilmember Heather Hutt. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so let's get right into the conversation. What are some of the African American Heritage Month celebrations happening in the city?
Well, we're doing a whole range of activities. We've done some things in city council chambers. We recognized Herb Weston, former president, Yvonne Wheeler, current chair of the County Federation of Labor. And we recognized Carlotta Bass. She was a journalist, an activist back in the day. We're proud to salute her for her significance and for the contribution she made, not only in journalism, but in activism. Mm-hmm. Some were surprised to learn that she was a vice presidential nominee on the progressive ticket in the 50s. In addition, she was the first Black woman to serve on the grand jury here in LA County. So it's a chance for us to celebrate the past and recognize the future.
That's nice. And what about you? What's happening in your district?
So we're doing like a hybrid, right? So Black History Month, Women's History Month, a conversation with Black women about a financial action plan. That'll be on March 4th. At Nate Holden from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Mm-hmm. So it would be great for everyone to come out and join that conversation.
Okay.
And all of us are celebrating the Pan-African Film Festival mostly at Magic Johnson Theaters, but throughout the city of Los Angeles. There are events all over. It's a celebration. This is the movie capital of the world, and this is the biggest African film festival that there is anywhere on the planet. And so it's here in Los Angeles. There's a host of events, literally dozens of events that happen connected to Pan-African Film Festival, which all three of us sponsor.
Wow. And we should mention that Mayor Bass opened this year's Pan-African Film Festival.
That's right.
She was there. And it's, for those who don't know, it's a big celebration of films about the Black diaspora, African American culture, as well as African culture, and it draws people to LA from around the world. So it's a big deal.
That's right.
Yeah. You know, the White House first recognized Black History Month back in the 1970s, almost 50 years ago, President Gerald Ford. Why is it important that we still recognize this month?
Well, the history of Black folks helps us understand the present that we live in today, both things that are happening to African Americans. So you look beginning of the year, 3 extrajudicial losses of life by our police department. And you go like, hey, how's that happening? Well, understanding the history and how we got here both makes you understand how it happens, and two, it helps you understand people's reactions to it and why folks fight and struggle so hard. That's one thing. And also, if you live in Los Angeles and you appreciate Los Angeles isn't the city that it is. It isn't the creative capital of the world without the participation of Black folks. And so knowing that history, knowing how it came about, I think helps you appreciate the city more, but also it equips you to help us build a better city and the kind of city we all deserve to live in.
Mm-hmm. It's our identity. Los Angeles Black history is about seeing ourselves, seeing our contributions, like they said, seeing what we can do, and making sure that our children self-esteem is intact so that they know that they can be contributors also to what happens in Black history, to what happens in their community. Mm-hmm. So it's really a time that Carter G. Woodson said, hey, we need to look at what we've done in our past so that we can know where we're going forward, when it was Black History Week. And so now we're celebrating a month. But actually, as Black folks, we celebrate every day.
All the time, yes.
And, and while we certainly are celebrating it, and it's important for Black folks, it's also important for other folks to know what our contributions have been.
That's right.
And so it's a way for us to tell our story, to share our story, to celebrate it, but to educate others as well.
One of the exciting things about Los Angeles is that Black history isn't the domain of just Black people or the responsibility of only Black people. So, this weekend in the Valley, Councilwoman Monica Rodriguez is recognizing an African-American Little League team that won the championship in the 70s, an all-Black team out of Pacoima. Councilmember John Lee is having an oral and visual history of African Americans in the San Fernando Valley, which, it's something that I don't even know that a lot of people knew there was much to say about that. But there's a whole event that's on this coming Sunday at a library in the Valley, and down in the harbor at San Pedro, Councilmember McCosker just made one of the prominent intersections there NAACP Square, because the city of San Pedro had a very strong, and still has a very strong, NAACP chapter. And so you see all across our city, there's a story to tell, and folks are telling it, be they African American like us and any other racial group.
It's interesting that you talked about, different groups recognizing each other. I have to bring this up. Recently, there were some events in the city, and some Black constituents are concerned that there's an effort to kind of diminish their power. So how do we move forward, and how do we foster more racial harmony?
Well, one thing, let's be clear, since Tom Bradley's days, we've had 3 African Americans on the city council. Now, some thought that was disproportionate.
At one time.
In the 8th, 9th, and 10th.
But never a woman.
In the 10th, yeah.
In the 10th. Black woman or otherwise.
Yeah.
So our power has not diminished. We certainly are sensitive to that. We want to make sure that we are able to maintain and to provide important and adequate representation. But we work together as a team.
That's right.
And so that's made a difference, I think.
We work together as a team, and I think it's important for the city to know, and I try to tell everybody this, that, redistricting is a process where politicians have an open fight about power. And that just gets ugly almost every time it happens. And so, and a lot of times people try to do it behind closed doors, and I think what happened here is that the closed door flew open, and so everybody saw what was happening. But that happens in the course of that struggle. I think about the 10th district. People don't know this history, this part of Black history. The city council, because they knew the 10th district was going to be won by Tom Bradley if an election was happening, they actually during redistricting renumbered it. So that it went from having an odd number, which elections would have been coming up, and they gave it an even number, so the elections wouldn't be until 2 years later. Wow. So there was 3 more years where there wasn't a second Black person in the city council. So all of these things kind of happened during redistricting. We're seeing that now. But what's great is that this city gets through it. And what's been great about this situation is in every racial group, Latinos, African American, Jewish people, Armenian people, Asian American, everybody stepped up and said, you know what, this is not who we are. We're going to struggle through this, and we're going to do it together.
So there was harmony in the community.
Yeah. I hosted a Embrace LA dinner, which was really founded by Herb Wesson, Marqueece, Harris-Dawson, and Curren Price. And the idea was to go into people's homes and have really robust conversations about race in Los Angeles. So after those incidents, I promised to host a dinner and then come back with a report back from the department, and then have Embrace LA dinners all over Los Angeles. We had our first one last night. We had it in Koreatown, which we heard Koreatown recently. We had it with Oaxacan people and Oaxacan food in the Koreatown Community Center. And there was everyone there, trans people there, LGBTQ people there. There were old folks, young folks, Black folks, white folks, Jewish folks, and we all talked about pain, resilience, and joy. And we all agreed that having a relationship with each other is what gave us the most joy. And so from that platform, then we will move forward to do just what we signed up to do, which is make it better.
Gives us joy and power.
That's right.
The power, we certainly are greater united.
That's right.
And when we can cross racial, ethnic lines, it makes it even stronger.
That's right.
You mentioned Tom Bradley. The city has only had 2 Black mayors in recent history. What does it mean now to have Karen Bass in the mayor's office?
Well, it's talk about joy. That was a joyful night for me to see her leadership get recognized on such a large scale. And also, I knew Karen well enough to know that Karen is what the city needed at this moment. I didn't think of anybody else who could face the moment that the city is in. and really, kick the dust off and get the momentum going. And so you've already seen she's entirely changed the conversation around homelessness. Like, we don't even talk about it the same way we talked about it before. And so I think it means a great deal to the city, because now we're in a situation where the person who's best for the job doesn't have to be the right gender, the right race, from the right neighborhood. This is a working class Black woman from South Central LA, but she is the best for the job, and the people sent her to the mayor's office.
Mm-hmm. It feels good. The night she won, there was so much hope. Like, you could just actually feel hopeful that things were going to change and that we were going to get things done. And grassroots people realized that their vote was their voice, because they beat $100 million.
Yes.
$100 million.
That's right.
And that's encouraging when folks have voter fatigue and they don't really think their vote matters. But look at what it did. Mm-hmm. Their vote really matters. And it is their power.
And as Councilman Dawson pointed out, that she was a known quantity. People knew what she could do, and she did it at the local level. She did it at the state level. I had the honor of serving with her in the legislature, and then when she went on to Congress, and she was the same Karen, down to earth, basic, collaborative, and that style of leadership is exactly what we needed at this time, and we were just glad that she's there.
Mm-hmm. You have to remember, she led the Congressional Black Caucus in the Trump era. Trump era, not just the caucus, but in the Trump era, where he was slashing anything that went to programs that were going to help any people of color, and she still got work done.
Incredible. When you go into South LA and other communities, a lot of people talk about policing. What are your thoughts on the community relationship with the LAPD? Any of you?
Well, that's always one of the toughest parts about living in LA as an African American. It's just challenging. You grow up here. Heather's got boys. I grew up here. Curren grew up here, and so you just have to kind of say. We don't even have to tell the stories. We kind of all know what happens.
Right. You just give
it the nod. I think that, at the same time, LA has some exciting models. I'm certainly excited about Community Safety Partnership was pioneered in Watts in the housing projects. It's now happening in my district and in the 9th District at South Park and in the San Fernando Valley. And we're going to move at other places. I frankly think that's the future of policing, because that's relationship-based policing. It's based on, I'm the officer, I'm licensed to use force if we have to, but I'm accountable to this neighborhood. This neighborhood knows my name, they have my cell phone, they understand that I answer to them. And I think that really is the direction that policing has to move into in order to be sustainable. I certainly grew up, and I imagine Curren and Heather know this well, where you get stopped by an officer and that person might be from Oklahoma and have no idea what neighborhood they're in, who they're talking to, so they can't tell me from the bad guy.
That's
you know what I mean? So, but when people have relationships with the neighborhood and they have connections, they understand when I see that kid, run in that store and run out with a bag of chips. If I know that kid's story, that changes the way I handle that situation. And so I think and it also makes it so I'm not suspicious of every single person driving in an automobile.
Yeah. I was in Newton yesterday. One of our sergeants was retiring. And it was just so heartwarming to see the community folks who came up to say, hey man, we really appreciate what you've been doing, blah, blah, blah. We didn't get along at first. In fact, 10 years ago, you were arresting me, and now we're friends. We're friends. And we understand what's going on and blah, blah, blah. And so that has really made the policing, community-based policing program work. Because people are in it, believe it, and they're acting on it. So, and it is making a difference.
So we're seeing a reimagination of law enforcement. We, as a team, will certainly be asking for more. Our mayor will be asking for more. All of us will be asking for more humanity in law enforcement. I personally would like to see implicit bias training as a part of their training, just like they got to jump over a wall. They have to have a better vision of all the complexities of the tapestry we call Los Angeles. And that will help us build a better society, right? I probably, as an elected official in California, got more black sons than anybody in the whole state.
That's probably right. Yeah.
And so my biggest fear every single day is, are they going to get stopped for their hair? Are they going to get stopped because the windows have too much tint? Are they going to get stopped because they run into something? And then I have to worry backwards from that. I got one kid that won't even drive. He's 34. He'll catch a whatever because he's had his nose to the ground for no apparent reason. Exactly. So he just won't even drive. Who's picking me up? I'll catch up something. But he's not. He doesn't want to put himself in a position to be a mistake.
You know, you talk about reimagining public safety. That's something that was a buzzword a year or so ago, but it's still relevant and still necessary and needed. Before Heather came on, Marqueece and I did a motion about unarmed responses. You know, we're still hoping to push that through,
pushing it through. Yeah.
But do we need to have armed police at every situation, at a traffic stop, at a domestic dispute, at a mental health breakdown? No. And so we're trying to figure out how we thread that needle, and it can make a difference.
That's a good point you brought up because, you know, when I've talked to police officers, they don't want to have to respond to some of these calls, you know, the homeless man in front of my business or whatever. So how much progress are we making on sending maybe social workers out instead of police officers?
Not enough. We have some pilot programs. You know, we have a mental health van. We have the police department itself has a mental evaluation unit. We've got some other programs, but frankly, it's too little, too slow. What we do have on the ground is fabulously successful. So the mental health response teams, they've literally taken thousands of calls, and in less than 3% of those calls have they actually had to end up calling an actual police officer. So the vast majority of 97% of those calls, they've been able to take care of themselves on the spot. So again, we know it works, but you got to build it. And, you know, people have to remember LAPD got built over decades and decades and decades of really the policy being anything that needed to be done after 5 o'clock, the police were going to do it.
With a gun.
With a gun. I mean, that's basically the way, not just Los Angeles, cities around the country have, you know, deployed police. And so to unwind that's going to take some time and a lot of hard work.
Okay.
Well, what's good is, people are willing.
Yes.
All over the city, in the Valley, in South LA, in the more affluent areas, people are willing to make change. So that's half the battle.
Yeah, the belief is, for example, in South LA, we don't like the police, we don't want the police. And that's not true. My constituents want to have, you know, police that are there, that are being responsive, that meet their needs, that are part of the community. And so it's not an anti-law enforcement, it's just an anti- officers.
That's right.
Those that are abusing.
Yeah, and you do have a point. I went to a meal giveaway, like a chicken giveaway in your district, and it was in an LAPD station in the community. There was a lot of response, positive response, and the food was good.
That always helps.
All right. We are almost out of time, but I want to ask one question. I spoke with you a year ago, and you mentioned reparations. Has there been any movement on that?
So there's been a good amount of movement. So folks know that Mayor Garcetti ordered the creation of a committee to look at reparations. All of us had people that we put on that committee. The mayor had folks that put on that committee. They're nearing the end of their study. At the same time, a little bit ahead of LA, the state of California has a similar committee. So they'll be coming out with a report soon as well. So we'll have something to work with and something to debate. In the coming months, probably by summertime, we'll have something there. Also, and so that's the big reparations policy, but there are also the one-offs. So activist attorneys, historians, genealogists are beginning to unpack things like Bruce's Beach, right? Yeah. And so the more things like that get unwound, you can actually do something material like say, hey, this was wrongfully taken. Let's give it back to the Price family, or let's give it back to the Hutt family. And I think you're going to see more of that. And that's not so much a policy that the government does. That's individuals out there digging through the crates and trying to figure out, piece together the history.
Well, I am happy to hear that. So we should hear something by the summer.
Summertime.
Summer.
Yes.
All right. Well, this has been a lively conversation. Thank you all so much for coming in, Councilman Curren Price, Councilman Marqueece Harris-Dawson, and Councilmember Heather Hutt. And I am Anita Bennett. Thank you so much for watching LA Currents. Have a great day.